The rain hadn't stopped since morning. Outside the old bus station, puddles formed like little lakes along the cracked pavement. Tucked just across the street was a narrow diner, small, quiet, the kind of place people passed without remembering. Inside, the clink of dishes and faint hum of a radio blended into the scent of broth and old wood. Behind the counter moved a young woman in a faded apron. She didn't say much, just wiped each table with care, refilled old men's tea without being asked, and straightened chairs no one noticed were crooked. She'd been working there nearly 4 years, long enough that she didn't flinch when someone snapped their fingers or left without tipping. Every day, when the lunch rush faded, she'd take out a small thermos from her bag, a dented thing with a worn sticker of a blue dolphin. She'd stuck it there in high school. It was her one quiet moment, eating alone by the back window. Once, a few months ago, she saw an old man nodding off near the kitchen. His hands were trembling. She didn't ask questions, just placed a wrapped pastry beside him and walked away before he opened his eyes. That kind of thing she didn't think twice about, but that day it was colder than usual, the kind of cold that finds the bones. She was unscrewing her thermos lid when she saw a man standing outside the window, soaked to the skin, holding his stomach like something inside hurt. She didn't say a word, just stood, opened the door, set her lunch on the table near the entrance, and turned back inside. When she looked again, the chair was empty. The dolphin thermos was gone. She exhaled softly and wiped down the next table. The next day, her thermos was still gone, and no one mentioned it. Not the boss, not the customers. As if kindness had vanished with the man she fed. But she didn't ask for it back. Some things were meant to be given away without return. The diner had grown quieter in recent weeks. Fewer footsteps, fewer voices. The rush that once filled the air with clinking spoons and shouted orders had thinned to a kind of stillness, and with the quiet came something colder, fewer hours, more eyes watching the clock. The schedule changed again. Her name slipped lower on the sheet tacked near the sink, inked in faint pencil now. The afternoon shift was gone. Only mornings remained. No warning, no apology. Half her income vanished with one dry erasure. A customer had complained the day before. A man in a tailored suit, silver watch catching the light. He didn't raise his voice, just frowned and pushed his glass forward. The water's cold. She had just poured it minutes before. The owner didn't ask, didn't look at her, just grunted toward the door. I don't pay anyone who makes customers upset. She didn't argue, only nodded, and returned to wiping down a table no one had touched. Later, during cleanup, one of the younger waitresses whispered, "You should find somewhere better, seriously." She just smiled and said, "If I can still earn something, I'll stay." She went home the same way she always did, quietly. Her place was a single rented room above a muffler shop. The fan made a ticking sound all night. The faucet dripped, then stopped, then started again. Her dinners were simple, if there was dinner at all, but she always sent something home. Every month, a white envelope with the careful folds. Her mother wrote back in uneven lines, "Take care of yourself, too." That night, rain came down in sheets. Her umbrella flipped inside out before she even reached the bus stop. She missed the last bus and walked the long way back. The streets were flooded, drains overrun. She crossed slowly, shoes soaked through, her coat too thin to matter. Near the bridge, under the awning of a boarded-up store, she saw him, a man hunched over, his shirt draped over a tiny, trembling puppy. He didn't speak, didn't beg, just sat there, small and still in the storm. She stopped, reached into her bag and took out a wrapped pastry, her only food that night. She placed it beside him gently. No words, no glance. Then walked on. There were no witnesses, no thank you, just the sound of rain and her footsteps pulling away. But as she stepped into the water, her eyes flicked back just once, not to be thanked, only to see if he had noticed. He hadn't moved, but the bread was gone. She turned forward again, head down against the wind, her fingers curling deeper into her sleeves. There would be no dinner tonight. But strangely, she didn't feel empty, only quiet. And quietly understood. A week passed. The man in the rain never returned. But every morning, as she tied her apron, she still thought of that silent glance backward, the way kindness left, unnoticed. A week passed. The rain returned, colder this time. It tapped against the windows in uneven rhythms as she cleared the last of the breakfast plates. Outside, the street gleamed with puddles and wind. She heard a thud. Near the curb, an old woman had slipped on the wet pavement. Her cane had rolled into the gutter. For a moment, no one moved. A few customers looked out the window, then turned back to their phones. She dropped the rag she was holding and rushed outside. The water soaked through her shoes instantly. She knelt beside the woman without hesitation, her knees pressed to the cold stone, hands reaching carefully. "It's okay," she said softly. Though the woman hadn't asked, she pulled a folded towel from her apron pocket, one she usually used to dry cups, and gently wiped the woman's hands and muddied palms, then her knees. She helped her sit upright, flagged down a taxi, and handed over the last crumpled bill from her pocket, without pause. When she returned inside, her sleeves were dripping, hair stuck to her cheek. The owner was waiting. "We had a table call for you," he said. "Next time, let someone else play hero." She didn't answer, just bowed slightly, mumbled, "Sorry," and went back to clearing plates. The next morning, she showed up on time, like always. No makeup, no stories. She cleaned the salt shakers and wiped the menus one by one. When someone dropped a spoon, she picked it up before they asked. The dolphin-shaped lunchbox was still gone. She hadn't replaced it. Instead, she brought bread wrapped in a soft towel, folded twice to stay warm. It didn't taste the same. That afternoon, after the last table cleared out, she was cleaning around table number 5, always the last one she did. She reached under the edge of the booth to pick up a stray napkin and found something else instead. A small square of paper, folded once, clean, dry. She opened it slowly. In small printed letters it read, "Don't think no one saw it. I saw it." She stared at it, then looked around quietly. There was no one left inside. She held the paper a long time, unsure what to do with it. That night, on her cot beneath the whirring fan, she read the note again, then flattened it carefully and slid it under her mirror. Just enough to see the edge each morning. A quiet reminder, someone had seen, and that was enough. She didn't tell anyone about it. She thought the note might be the end of it, but a few days later, table number 5 held something else. For days, she kept the note tucked behind the mirror, glancing at it before every shift. She never found out who left it, but something about being seen, quietly, had settled into her chest like warmth that stayed. The morning air was crisp, still damp from the rain that had passed through the night. She arrived early, like always, and unlocked the diner with the usual turn of her wrist. The bell above the door chimed softly. But something was different. Table number 5 wasn't empty. Sitting there, neatly placed at the center of the table, was a familiar heat-retaining lunchbox. She stopped mid-step, her breath caught. It wasn't just any box, it was hers. The dolphin sticker, slightly faded at the edges, still clung to the side, just as she remembered. She stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like approaching something sacred. The latch clicked open with a soft snap. Inside was an old key, tarnished but heavy, and a folded piece of paper. She opened it. "I owe you lunch. If you ever dream of a home, try this key." No name, no return address, just the key and the note. She looked around the empty diner, heart thudding, but no one was there. That day and the next, she tried the key on every lock she could find. Bike chains, storage sheds, alley gates. Nothing fit. On the 4th day, she saw it. Pinned to a crooked electric pole across from the diner, barely held by rusted staples, was a small notice, looking for a trustworthy person to look after an empty house. 27 Geomott Street. If you have the key, just come in. She read it 3 times. The words blurred slightly at the edges. She folded the note and slipped it into her pocket, unsure whether it was foolishness or fate that pulled her toward the address. The house stood quiet, hidden beneath old vines and peeling paint. Small, worn, but not abandoned. Someone had swept the front steps. The mailbox was empty. The curtains, thin and clean. She inserted the key. The lock turned. Inside, the rooms were bare. No furniture, no photos. Just air and dust and stillness. But in the kitchen, tucked between the stovetop and the window, lay a second note, neatly folded. She opened it with shaking fingers. I used to sit at table number 5. Thanks for the lunchbox. I don't need this place anymore. I hope you can start over here. She stood in the center of the room, note in hand. She didn't cry. She just walked to the open window, stared out at the quiet street, and, without thinking, set the key on the windowsill, as if waiting to see if someone might come for it again. The breeze moved through the curtains, lifting them slightly, like fingers brushing past. She didn't know why she left the key there, only that it no longer felt like hers to keep. She didn't move at first. The key was still warm in her palm, the paper slightly bent from how tightly she'd held it. Tears fell, quiet and unexpected, not from sadness, not exactly. She didn't know the man's name, didn't know if he'd watched her for days or only once. She would never know what moment he'd seen or why it had stayed with him. But in her chest, something loosened, like a knot that had quietly ached for years, now undone. It felt somehow like someone had placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, I see. Thank you for being kind, even when no one saw. She moved into the little house, still worked the morning shift, still wore the same apron. But when she walked home now, the wind moved differently. It followed her through the trees, lingered in the garden. The thermos sat by the stove, the dolphin sticker smiling back. Some things you think you've given away forever come back in the strangest ways. Have you ever seen kindness like that? Tell us below. Maybe it's being remembered again, just maybe.